never sleeps, pal.
Hey there, welcome to episode 51 of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. I'm Pete Townsend, your co-host of Money Never Sleeps, along with Owen Fitzgerald, who is off on holiday this week, so I'm taking the mic solo once again. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's Fintech and Financial Services Recruitment Specialist, Top Tier Recruitment. If you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, we highly recommend you have a chat with the team at Top Tier Recruitment, as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. In this episode, I catch up with Brustkern, co-founder and CEO of the Lendit Fintech Conference. Bo is based in the Denver area and has a super interesting background in venture capital as a founder and co-founder of multiple businesses, a coach, mentor, entrepreneurial champion, and media man. As part of his mission with Lendit Fintech, he does fintech roundtables in different cities around the world a few times each year. Before Bo made a trip to Dublin earlier this year, he reached out to Owen and me, see if we could join his roundtable, but we both had things going on at home. Beyond that, snow in Ireland made it near impossible to meet him earlier, as things can get a bit crazy in Ireland when we get even a light dusting way up here at 53 degrees north latitude. After I figured out what he was up to, I made up my mind to get to know Bo. After a couple of chats and emails, we've lined things up, so here we go with episode 51 of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again. Welcome back to Money Never Sleeps. We're on with Bo Brustkern, co-founder and CEO of Lendit Fintech. Known best for their conferences, but they and Bo do quite a bit more. Welcome to the show, Bo.
Thanks so much, Pete.
Great to have you here after all this time. Let's get right into it. So let's start with your backstory and how you got to this point.
So I've spent about 15 years as an entrepreneur, and 10 years prior to that as an investor. Very briefly stated, I came out of college, was thrown into financial services, finance, and really fell in love with it. Didn't expect to, but I did, and quickly made my way over to the buy side, private equity first, and then venture capital in Silicon Valley. And I was in Silicon Valley between June of 2000 and about late 05. And that was a really interesting time to be in Silicon Valley. After making a family decision to move back to Colorado, where my wife's family is from, I needed to make a change. The venture scene in Colorado in the mid 2000s was really it wasn't very strong, and so I set out to be an entrepreneur first and foremost to become a better investor. That was my initial intent, and later fell in love with entrepreneurship for a variety of reasons, and those reasons changed honestly as I went through as I continued to go through my career, and stayed in financial services. So started serving the buy side with my first startup, and because that was the client I knew, and that was an easy thing to get started in. And then eventually sort of made my way over to high tech and fintech, and as a result of being involved in a fintech, my co-founders at Lendit decided that there really ought to be a gathering place for us to learn more about this industry that we were in. And we thought Meetup might be a good, a good idea, right? It was early 2013, and there wasn't really a conference that was really on the scene yet that was worth going to. So we decided to have a meetup, and then we sort of got a little bit more confident in what we were doing, and turned that into a one-day conference, and then started selling tickets. And we even sold a couple of sponsorships, and what we was hoping originally was going to be a gathering of maybe 50 or if we really blew the lights out, 100 people. We were shocked and delighted to find that 300 people came for the initial what became the Lendit Fintech Conference. That was in June of 2013. And I was a co-founder of that effort, but then I didn't really, I wasn't really terribly involved in the Lendit organization as it grew. It was really Peter and Jason that pushed that forward for the first several years while I built our fintech. And then, just a couple of years ago, I turned my attention back to Lendit and totally fell in love with it and its mission. And I've been CEO for almost 2 years. And we're on a growth path, and we're on a mission to do great things within our community.
Awesome. And I saw kind of the business that you had exited from, that you sold, the Arkstone Partners, right? That was kind of what you said that was your first go into the entrepreneurial side of things, in terms of, hey, you've got something that you're good at, you've got something that you know well, let's see if we can turn this into a business. And that went nearly 10 years, if not a little bit longer, before you exited that and sold on to, I forget the name of the firm that you sold on to.
Yep. But Frank Rimmerman. It's a quite well-respected regional accounting firm that has a valuation practice within it that was highly complementary to ours, and we sold to Frank Rimmerman. Yeah, it was 10 years. It was 10 years old at that time, and Arkstone I refer to fondly as my entrepreneurial training wheels, and the company that, despite all of my failures, just wouldn't die. And I
Gotcha.
So I succeeded despite myself, or the company succeeded despite all everything I did that turned out to be sort of a mistake. It survived.
Absolutely. And during that time as well, I saw that you had started up NSR Invest and then sold that on, right? Was that associated with Arkstone, or was that a separate?
No, that was the fintech I was referring to, where we and it is still. It's actually what we did is we raised venture for it. So I and Jason and Peter co-founded this entity to make investments in peer-to-peer lending. We were going to become an asset manager, and at first we thought just a fund, and then we fell in love with the idea of really building technology around it. Made some acquisitions along the way. Several years later, and fast forwarding a bit, we've amassed a couple $100 million onto the platform, and raised venture capital, and have a management team, and we now sit on the board and assist the company wherever we can, but we're not actively managing it. And so that was the company that brought me really close to threw me headlong into the world of building a fintech, and watching how quickly things can move, and particularly in terms of the asset management and wealth management and wealth innovation world, that gave me a great deal of learning, and it also allowed me to understand sort of where my best strengths are, and that's it was due to the raising the venture round and hiring the new management team that led me back to Lendit, which is where I really feel I belong.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Looking back kind of at some of the history with Lendit Fintech, Bo, I took a look all the way back to 2014 with what was the Day 2 Remarks video from 2014 that you did in San Francisco, which I think was your first one.
San Francisco, right? was actually number 2, and I'm fearful of what comes next. I remember being passionate about whatever I was saying, but I don't honestly remember what I said on stage. So lay it on me.
What you said was all excellent content. What I've noticed, though, is just with your recent trip to Europe that you did and watching the video blogs from that trip, what I noticed as being a big difference between 2014 and 2019 was that your voice changed a bit, and your mannerisms changed a bit. In 2014, you were very wide-eyed and careful and considerate in terms of what you were saying. In 2019, still, very considerate, probably less wide-eyed after, 5 years of experience, but definitely more honest, which I thought was pretty cool. And, that you kind of just got the real feel and sense for Bo as an individual, a bit more than kind of the, like I said, the careful comments from the past. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's great. I super appreciate that.
During that time, these 5 years of, being on the road, of traveling around, of talking to so many different people, I'm sure those experiences have impacted you as an individual. Yeah,
it has. I would say there's a lot of just growth in and comfort in who I am as an entrepreneur and as a leader that's coming out there. I think I'm gaining a lot of strength by or maybe confidence that's coming out in those more recent videos that you're seeing and things that I'm writing, where the community is responding to me in a way that I just wouldn't have ever expected, and accepting me as a leader of and sort of a leading voice in the community. That's I feel like I need to earn that every day. But it is, and so having that confidence that that I can be a little more honest, like you said, and that by being more honest, I can therefore be more impactful. That I think is what is how I give myself permission to do that. And that having that integrity and saying what's really on my mind and what I'm really thinking is actually, whether people agree with it or not, at least it's going to move people, right? And it may move them to anger, it may move them to recoil from my comments, but it's movement, and movement is good.
Yeah, exactly. It's you being you, and that's kind of what you want, and that's what people like, right? And you and I talked about this the first time that we chatted, Bo, which was that sometimes you just got to get out there, and hit record, and what comes out comes out. And if you are in this space and you are doing this every day, generally what's going to come out should sound somewhat intelligent, right?
Let's hope.
So, and mix in with a good bit of human perspective and personal reflection, and you've got a compelling story. If you think about what you're working on right now, I know that you've got the London conference coming up in September, but you've just done your European tour. You have, like I said, the prep work going on for the next few months. Tell me where you're spending your time over the next week or two.
Well, so the European tour was just phenomenal, and it was supremely productive. My only job there was to really build community in a very intimate way, right? To gather fintech CEOs and sit down for a gathering, usually a dinner, sometimes a lunch, but always with the intent of opening up the conversation and allowing each other to really to reflect on the question that you just asked, which is, what are you working on and what are you struggling with, right? And how can we, are there ways that we can work together? That's not really, we're not trying to force partnership discussions, but those collaborations happen, particularly when you get birds of a feather together. And these birds are founders and C-level executives at fintechs, right? And innovation officers within banks. The neat thing about that, there's so many neat things about it that I could talk about it, but it was very self-contained. And by the time I had hit publish on the blog post and the video that I recorded for practically every one of my stops, was really just to send out a quick thank you, and then to move on. And so in moving on, I go back to my day-to-day job, which I see as leading an organization that is building community, and and that involves a whole host of things, right? A lot of it is strategic direction. A lot of it's hiring and partnering, and a lot of it is just trying to stay in the conversation and understanding where the conversation is leading us. And so if we take this role of being the voice of the industry very seriously as members of the community, those are the most important things we do is to listen and then reflect what we're hearing back to the community.
During your trip, what were some of the highlights, some of the main takeaways?
Well,
that you got
my
from that?
favorite exchanges were the smallest ones. So I was in 7 cities over 12 days and hosted 6 roundtables, and they ranged in size from 6 to almost 20 people. And the highlights were always in the exchange, right? The gathering of people where they and in comments that went something like, "This was inspiring," right? Or, "We haven't gotten together as a community before you arrived. Let's do this again soon." and when are you coming back? Or when are you bringing Lendit to X city, right? And I got that a lot. And in a way, my response was, this is bringing Lendit to Berlin. This is bringing Lendit to Stockholm, or Vilnius, right? And it just, so highlights were just the magic that happens when I bring like-minded people together and just listen. And there's another just when I introduced the conversation, a lot of times I introduced it by saying, "Look, if this goes well, this is probably the last time you're going to hear me speak all night," right? And that's really the way it ran. It was really beautiful.
That's great. And thinking about your modus operandi here for running the roundtables, for running the conference, why do you think now is the right time for you to be doing this?
Well, the industry needs to be reminded of its mission constantly. It's not that now is different than another time, but now that we have, Fintech has been on a tear for years, and we're going to have bumps and bruises and peaks and valleys along the way, but really financial technology, all of financial services, is and will forever be touched by changes in technology. So the reason it's important is because I feel like it's our mission to make sure that the people that are leading these organizations, whether they're fintechs or innovators within the giant financial services firms, right, or government officials, or associations, regulatory bodies, what have you, everyone needs to be reminded why we're doing this, and the fundamental reason, which is what I say to my team, and what gets me out of bed every morning, is that the efficiency with which financial services are rendered is directly correlated to the financial well-being of the poorest among us.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Right? That's what we need to keep in mind. And we may be working on, first world problems. We may be working on UI and customer acquisition and things like that. We may also be working on the underbanked or the unbanked, or student debt, which is an absolute albatross around particular. I know communities around the world, but particularly the United States population. All those issues are important, and when we succeed by building this community and building it stronger, then I believe we are succeeding in that mission in our own small way.
Absolutely. One of my favorite fintechs that I'm working with here in Ireland are called Pipit, and they are enabling migrants to support their families back home cheaper and safer, right? By going up against the Western Unions of the world and making it very easy to get cash where it needs to go. And it's not just into a bank account back home in the country that you originally came from, or to your father's or your brother's bank account. It can go right to your mother's medical insurance bill, right? Or a mobile phone bill, or for e-commerce for buying the weekly groceries, the weekly shopping, right? So there's a strong social element to it, but there's also, it's fintech, right? At the very core, with both a B2C and B2B play. So and working with them is kind of the closest out of all of the ones that I'm working with right now to kind of fintech for good, right? But it's not charity, it's a financial model, right? And that there is an opportunity that exists to reach people and to provide them services at an affordable rate. But because of the way that you can scale it with technology, it can be done as part of a profitable business venture,
Yep.
right? So it's not being apologetic about it, and it's not being overtly capitalistic about it. It's just being, hey, we're providing a service, and we're enabling you to improve your life.
And I will be willing to bet that Pipit is not doing it alone, in the sense that they're building on other building blocks that the fintech community has put forward, probably via APIs that allow it to render some of those pieces of the puzzles. Some of those services it's not 100% built by Pipit. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an API, and it's, it plugs into existing payment processors around the world.
Yeah. And I met, actually, interestingly, in Northern Ireland, I met a young woman who is building a business that is analogous to that, but in the sense that the services rendered are very specific. And she's pointing her company at the very real problem of local poverty issues, right? How can I help that man on the street without I guess the very real risk, or by minimizing the very real risk that the money will be used for a purpose that it probably isn't good for that person or for society, right? And by leveraging technologies that are, built, some of which are built in the United States, some are European, some are, African. Like it's basically a compilation of all of the advancements that these various fintechs around the world have built. Then we're building a point solution, right? I love it when I see that. And I'm seeing that more and more, and that's really one of the joys I get out of my work is being able to, in a sense, I guess I'm living vicariously, but really watching these entrepreneurs build magical solutions.
Yep, absolutely. I totally get that. What do you think you have in terms of, over the last 5 years, Bo, as co-founder and CEO of Lendit? And I know that your role obviously changing over the last few years since you exited Arcstone, that there's been a moment, or has there been a moment, I guess is the question, along the way, where you realize that, hey, I'm pretty good at this, that kind of stands out for you?
That's a good question. I guess I would point to a time I came into the CEO role at Lendit at a time of great change, and we were going through significant growing pains. And I had been building businesses for for over a decade, but the Lendit challenge was different. I had teams on 3 continents. I've got a China team, a Europe team, and a US team. And the US team is mostly in New York. I live in Denver. My co-founder Peter lives in Denver. We have people in Atlanta. We have people in Wisconsin, and like I said, we're going through some pretty extraordinary growing pains. We had grown so quickly, so fast that we really were throwing a lot of we were throwing people at problems instead of process and efficiency. So we had some hard work to do,
Yep.
right? And that was, if we're going to continue to grow, if we're going to continue to build and serve this community, we have to get our minds right about how to build and scale this entity. And I had a fair bit of I don't want to say I was unconfident, but I certainly saw that as a material challenge, like something I hadn't faced before. And so there was, at one point, there was an individual on my team, after we'd gone through quite a lot of organizational change, which was painful, and reorchestrating teams and things that were challenging for people to go through, but really led to a much healthier organization. I did have one of my teammates, who I respect a great deal, come up and say to me, "Look, I wasn't quite sure what to expect when you came in," and none of us were, right? We really weren't sure what to believe about your story, about why you were coming into the CEO role, and on and on. And he said, "I will go to battle for you anywhere." And
Wow.
And that just blew me away.
And how long had that been?
We were pretty deep into it. It was a good 9 months, right? We had been through some battles. So it was, it wasn't too long ago when I heard those words, and that made me feel like, what? I think I'm making a difference.
How much of your day-to-day activity, Bo, is around conference organization versus entrepreneurial community ecosystem contribution and leadership?
I've got an amazing team, so I spend very little on the actual organization of the conference. Okay. I do absolutely, like, I do site visits. I go to restaurants and say, okay, does this have the vibe I want it to have for this after party or whatever? And I do, I get involved in client service. If a customer is unhappy, I will call them and I will figure out how to make it right. I write thank you letters to my sponsors. Like I get involved in a lot of activities, and that are day-to-day activities. But for the most part, I am really just my number one job is to build a great team and to make sure that we are on track with our mission, and that we're taking advantage of opportunities. I mean, we're really only touching China, North America, which is really a global gathering place, and Europe. And the European Conference in the past has been, I would say, fairly British, and we're trying to make it a truly European conference, right? And so there's an aspect of we need to do more, but there's also let's be mindful about why we're doing it, and I think that's one of my more important jobs as well.
Yeah, that's just so refreshing to hear, based on some of the conference leadership individuals that I've met along the way, and that you're staying very true to the mission, which is awesome to hear. You mentioned a couple minutes ago, Bo, your team member, when they came up to you and said that they would back you for anything, right? They'd get behind you for anything. What do you think are the personality traits that have been helpful to you along the way? Obviously, a teammate saying that to you is quite helpful, but what do you think has worked well in terms of your own personality?
It's a tough one. I'm deeply introspective and try to, challenge myself a lot and try to shore up those deficiencies that I have. And so I'm really good at telling you what my week, where I need to work, places I need to work on. I don't know why you're asking. Sort of what characteristic would engender that sort of loyalty? Yeah, or yeah. I mean, I guess there's one thing that I talk a lot about, and I think at least I try to do a good job at it, and that is just being creating a workplace that is defined by vulnerability and vulnerability based leadership, meaning essentially I can I am I'm here for the benefit of you, and you can say anything to me that you like, as long as it's coming from a place of integrity, where your comment is leveled at me for the benefit of the company or the organization or the family, or whatever it is you're talking about. And that's one aspect that I've been sort of pounding the table on for a long time. I don't know if that has I don't know if that's sort of a I don't know if that's led to my success. I honestly don't, but I do believe that it is part of my fabric. Like, I really resonate with the idea of having a organization where there is a genuinely positive and constructive conflict going on at all times, where people can level their grievances and others do not take offense. It's not a political organization, but it's a we essentially welcome conflict.
Now, I look way back into your LinkedIn profile to get this tidbit, Bo. But do you think that came from your days in the rugby club at Dartmouth College?
Goodness. Well, I learned a lot at college, and a lot of it was about comradeship.
Yeah. Rugby is a big thing here in Ireland, and some of our listeners out there that are huge soccer fans. And yes, we do say soccer here in Ireland.
Do you really?
When you say football, we do, because football is Gaelic football.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So we do refer to it as soccer, unless you're referring to the English Premier League, and then you're talking about football. Anyway, there is a sense of rugby being a very much a team sport, Gaelic football being very much a team sport. Obviously, soccer is a team sport as well, but soccer teams can win based upon the outstanding achievement of an individual, and an individual alone, right?
Yeah.
A striker that just dominates a game. You can't do that in rugby or in Gaelic football.
Yeah.
So it is very much, everyone pulling for each other, and those that kind of grew up through some of those sports, when you see them out in the, in the after sports world, rather than saying professional, but after sports, you can kind of see that. And I find it quite an interesting phenomenon to dig into a bit when I'm talking to someone about their, the sports they played growing up.
100%. I love that analogy, and I think it's bang on. I mean, that was why I fell in love with that sport. Is it was so much about the 15, in our case, the 15 young boys that or young men that went on the field and did not come off until the final whistle. Right. That was just an incredible thing to be a part of. I think it did. I think it did leave an impact, and my closest friends, of course, were on the rugby pitch with me. And
that's great.
Yeah, I think there's something there.
That's great. And with everything that you have going on, obviously quite a busy life, Bo, who do you lean on?
Well, let's start with the easy one. From a professional standpoint, I've got an amazing team. I lean on every single member of my team. I have an amazing president, Joy Schwartz, who is a really good compliment to me. She's a commensurate professional, and is so good at challenging me and making sure to keep me on task, on track. I've got an incredible co-founder, Peter, who sits just a couple feet from me here in this small office in Denver that we have, and again is a great compliment to me. And then the fourth person on my leadership team besides myself is Todd Anderson, who is our director of content. And I would say those three people are cornerstones of sort of the people that but first come to mind from a professional standpoint that I lean on. And that's, but we have a small team. I mean, when I talk about our leadership team, you really just go a short step and we get to the entire team, right? I've got a grand total of about 20 people around the earth. And
that's still a good sized team for a business, for any business that you're running, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, it is, and it has to continue to grow, and it has to continue to change. And the people that I'm working with, all of us, we need to grow individually as professionals in order to move our company forward. So I love that. I love the size of company. I'm certain we will grow. I'm not looking to grow, our team, in great numbers, but I do think that's going to be a natural outcropping of our success. But I do love the size that we are. It's it remains intimate.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. And I asked one of our past guests this question, and he gave me the best answer that I've heard so far. When I asked him who leans on him the most, right? And what he said was his dog, right? That was the only person in his busy personal and professional life that depended on him, right? But who leans on you?
I'd say my family, right? And that's mutual. I think that was the answer I was avoiding giving because that touches deeply. But my family definitely depends on me. And I take that seriously. That, of course, but they're the loves of my life, and I do so much of what I do just for them.
Yeah, keep that fresh and keep that close. I do that myself. Whenever I'm facing a crossroads in what I'm doing, I think, would my wife and kids be proud of me for this decision I'm about to make? Right, and that keeps you true north.
So true.
What keeps you going through the brick walls when things get really hard? Obviously, you've got a lot of inspiration in your life, but what else is there that just keeps you moving?
Yeah, so there have been some dark days, as I mentioned, like the Arkstone thing. I love the expression "an overnight success, 10 years in the making." Right? It's so brutal to be. It's so hard to build a business, and especially as a newcomer to the trade. And gosh, when I look back at some of those hard moments, what kept me going. Number one, I went through one of my most challenging times and this is going to sound silly, but I was reading a book about the book was called Life and Fate. It's written by Vasily Grossman. It is about 1,000 pages long, and it is about it's taken from the perspective of a Russian Jew between like 1920 and 1950. So can you imagine a more challenging time? And so one of it is just keeping in damn perspective, right? I mean, the things that I'm going through now are nothing compared to what others are going through right now, or what my forefathers have been through to get me here. So that's like just at the very base level. I'm very happy that I was reading this book about a truly talk about a truly challenging time for millions upon millions of people during a time when I felt like my world was falling apart. professionally. And so there's a little bit of that, keeping perspective. The other bit is just, being confident. Maybe three different questions. Is the direction I'm going the right direction? Is this mission worth it? And am I following the mission, right? Do I have the capability to take another step? Can I move forward just one more step? And is it important to do that, right? So there's always an option to quit, and we need to be mindful of that. There are times where we do need to quit, but is this the time? Is really the question. Never mind how hard it is. People have done much harder things. Is this the time to quit, or is this time to persevere? And I have one company we didn't mention was a spinoff from Arkstone Equity Research, and I put a lot of effort and a lot of money into that company, and we did not succeed. We failed, and there was a time when we needed to quit. So it's not always just blasting through the brick walls. It's keeping a real, just a real honest perspective with myself that whether or not it's really a fight that we should be fighting.
Yeah, no, and sometimes that desire to win can get the better of you. And I'm sitting here right now recording this today with a big cast on my foot because of an injury from when I was running marathons 18 years ago.
No.
And where I didn't quit. And I did some damage to my foot that now is lasting quite a lot longer than I thought it would, but just came back after 18 years. But it's a story for another day. Now that I've confessed to the listeners as to why I'm hobbling around and recording in the home studio today, one of the reasons that I'm trying to stay a bit closer to home these days, what's something that people wouldn't expect to know about you, Bo?
I think not everyone knows I have a big family. I have 5 kids. Yep. Awesome indeed. You know what? Here's something. I was a creative writing major in college. I wanted to be a writer.
Nice.
I wanted to be an artist of some kind. And so there's always this draw toward the creative. And I did find it in finance, right? I mean, in entrepreneurship specifically, there's a massive amount of creativity that can be expressed, especially in this media and events business, where when we put on an event, there's a lot of show business there, and so I do get to do things like record those videos and do some writing and things like that. I do get to express myself creatively in some ways. So I think that might be one thing. I do have a request, actually, since I believe you have a reasonably healthy Irish audience. So my fifth child, Canty, he's 3 years old. He's named after an Irish line that disappears as soon as we get to Cork. So, like, if I go back, I can find Timothy Canty. He's the first known Canty that came to America. He was born in 1833, I think, in County Cork. I have no idea who those Cantys are, but it's got to be a name that somebody would recognize. So maybe someone can ping me after this the airing of this show and can give me a clue as to who Timothy Canty's parents may have been. It can't be too far.
We will get the word out, Bo.
Please do.
I've got my story like that, and just you telling your story about the Russian Jew between around World War I, World War II. Daniel Harrington, my great grandfather, I think, left West Cork in 1842, I believe, about a month before his 15th birthday, and arrived in Newport, Rhode Island on his 15th birthday, and he left, and the only reason that I exist is because he left.
Yeah.
Otherwise, during that time in West Cork, he wouldn't have survived, right? So I'm just thankful he did, right? But I've come back to reclaim the bloodline. And my mom is on a similar plight to you to go find those Harringtons down in West Cork so that we can rock up to the next family reunion, right?
That's amazing.
But we'll see if we can find the Cantys and the Harringtons together.
And they may be intertwined.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Bo, thank you so much for coming on. Last question. Is there anyone that you'd like to see on the show?
That's a great question. You know what? I'll venture this. I have, having just come away from this tour of Europe, I was really most surprised by what I saw in Vilnius, Lithuania. And everyone kept pointing to this one gentleman who changed the game for apparently all of financial service in Lithuania, and did so just a few years ago. I want to say it was like 5 years ago or something. And I don't know the whole story, so that's why I would say I'd love to hear this story.
I could do that.
The gentleman's name is, I believe it's pronounced Maris Jurgelis, and he's basically the architect of the changes that were brought about in Lithuania, and they were on the regulatory side. Basically, he was borrowing from the FCA and applying those changes to Lithuania with the intent of just creating a more an environment that was more hospitable to competition within Lithuania, and it turned out to open Lithuania to a greater role within Europe. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting story. I'd love to dig deeper there, and I think it would resonate with a lot of with people across Europe, maybe across the world, in terms of what little changes can we make, in this case in the regulatory environment, that would bring about such a big change in the fabric of the financial system within that region. So that's why I suggest this gentleman for you.
That's great. I got a couple of reasons to do that. One of the fintechs here that I'm an advisor to, QPQ, they are having some discussions with Lithuania in terms of part of their overall licensing and jurisdictional framework. Also, the other side of my mom's family that I mentioned, guess where they're from?
Are they Lithuanian?
They are.
That's wonderful. It's an amazing. I've only been there once, and as you might imagine, I was only there for about, a little more than 24 hours. But I loved it. And I loved every place I went on this tour. It was incredible, and I loved the people I met. And as you know, the people of Ireland, the entire island of Ireland, are dear to my heart. So I keep them close. But this really was a special visit. You got to get out there. Have you been?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I haven't,
okay.
Not yet.
All right.
But it's definitely in the cards.
You got to do it.
But again, Bo, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an awesome conversation. Keep doing what you're doing. It's working. And look forward to talking to you more as we move ahead. Hopefully, I'll be at Lendit Fintech in London in September.
Please do. I'll look forward to seeing you and Owen there.
Great. Thanks, Bo.
Take care, Pete. Bye.
Money never sleeps, pal.
That wraps it up, folks. Thanks to Bo for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. To learn more about Bo and the Lendit FinTech Conference, you can get all the details on the upcoming conferences on lendit.com, with the next one on the 26th and 27th of September in London. You can also follow Bo on Twitter at Brustkern, Brustkern. Yes, I can still spell. If you'd like to get involved in what we do with Money Never Sleeps, drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie or direct message us on Twitter at MNSShow. As always, show notes and links are on moneyneversleeps.ie. We're on all the major podcast platforms as well, and remember, when you're searching on those platforms, Money Never Sleeps is spelled as all one word. As for me, I increase the odds of startup success. DM me on Twitter at PTownsendNV if you want to know more. You can follow Owen on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast. Till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.